Mr. Dershowitz says, I'm on the extreme end.
You are.
He's in the mainstream.
Right.
I hope people will listen to the evidence. He cited a hoax. I cite the scholarly sources. Mr. Dershowitz says he doesn't agree with the human rights organizations.
On some issues.
I quote B'Tselem, Human Rights Watch, Amnesty International. I quote the mainstream sources, the mainstream numbers. He quotes internal investigations of the IDF and hoaxes. But I'm the extremist. But I'm the extremist. But I'm the extremist. Mr. Dershowitz then throws in another lie. He says, oh, Finkelstein, he's an extremist. He doesn't support the two-state settlement. I've been, my entire adult life, I've been involved in the Israel-Palestine conflict. I started publishing on the topic in 1984. I wrote my doctoral dissertation on the topic in 1988. I lecture about 2 or 3 times a week on the topic. I'd like you to show me a statement where I say I don't support the two-state settlement. You said I don't support a two-state settlement. Could you provide the evidence for that?
You don't support the kind of two-state settlement that is today's consensus, which means that Israel has the right to define its own existence and to create borders consistent not with the pre-1967 lines, which Abba Eban, who was a great dove, called the Auschwitz lines, but rather with 242.
Listen to his source. This is a scholar. The first source is One Day in September, Sony Pictures, www.sonypictures.com.
It's also a book.
That's page 257, footnote 21.
It's also a book.
A Sony picture. Number 2, please listen carefully.
Right.
Some key dates to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. I checked that source. I spent some time. I'm not very computer literate, but I spent time tracking it down. You know what the source was? It was a chronology to a high school syllabus.
But,
is that serious?
But nobody disputes the fact that 3,000 to 4,000 people were killed.
When you have an undisputed, is that a serious source?
When you have an
a chronology to a high school syllabus.
Let me ask you this question: do you dispute the conclusion?
3,000 to 4,000 we're talking about the kinds of sources you put forth. I didn't even have
to cite a source.
A Sony picture. Sony picture.
It's a book.
And a high school curriculum.
One Day in September is an important book that came out.
www.sonypictures.com/classic/one day. Very serious source.
Because nobody disputes that.
I'm really humbled by that source.
Okay, I'm looking at page 256 of Benny Morris's book, Righteous Victims, A History of the Zionist-Arab Conflict.
He's referring to phase 2 now, the same one as you. Go ahead.
And you're talking about right over here.
Altogether, yeah.
Altogether, about 200,000 to 300,000 Arabs fled their homes during the second stage of the Exodus.
There's a big difference between 2 and 3,000 and 2 and 300,000. Now, you could check this many times, Mr. Dershowitz, but you're really going to have to pay the $10,000.
No.
And I hope you'll allow me to I hope you'll allow me to earmark it for Jenin. I would like to give it to Jenin.
I want to warn everybody here that although I'm not a litigious person, when you make allegations of plagiarism, that's a technical term which has great legal implications.
I agree.
And
in Joan Peters' book, From Time Immemorial, she coins a phrase. The phrase is turn speak. And she said,
no, she borrows it from. She borrows it from who is it?
I'm sorry.
No, she attributes it and borrows it from somebody else.
I'm
It's not her
sorry.
own.
She coins the phrase. You see, you don't know what you're talking about, and that's pretty terrible. She coined the phrase "turn speak," and she says she's using it as a play off of George Orwell, which, as all listeners know, used the phrase newspeak.
Right.
And she coined her own phrase, turn speak. You go to Mr. Dershowitz's book, he got so confused in his massive borrowings from Joan Peters that on 2 occasions, I'll cite them for those who have a copy of the book, on page 57 and on page 153, he uses the phrase, quote, George Orwell's turn speak. Turn speak is not Orwell, Mr. Dershowitz. Turn speak is not Orwell, Mr. Dershowitz. You're the Felix Frankfurter Chair at Harvard.
I like it. I think it's a very elegant
well,
phrase.
maybe you like it, and
I do.
evidently Joan Peters liked it, but George Orwell never heard of it, to the best of my knowledge.